Hi, everybody. We are now collecting ideas for the future Interreg Specific Objective Better Cooperation Governance. And today we have as a guest here Helena Järviste from the program Estonia, Latvia. And yeah, Helena, we've heard that you have some interesting activities, projects ongoing in your program. I think it's working along the line of alleviating cross-border obstacles, making administrations across countries cooperate, which is for sure an issue to be tackled in the future. Interreg Specific Objective Better Cooperation Governance. Hello.
Hello. Hi. Thank you for having me.
And what we heard, what I understood is that between the two countries, you have a committee which regularly exchanges on cross-border issues, which, let's say, for the part of Europe where I'm located, is an amazing achievement. And for a start, could you tell us briefly a little bit about the committee and how you managed to link it to the program?
Yes, indeed. Already now 15 years, we have such cooperation working form as governmental committees, Estonian Latvia Governmental Committee and then Latvian Estonian Governmental Committee. And for cooperation to discuss cooperation, border obstacles and cooperation between regions and local authorities. There is this working format as joint sessions of intergovernmental commissions. So the format is that they meet once a year and take decisions and have discussions then on topical issues. And the topics can be really from very different areas of life. And now we have just recently, a few years ago, such methodology was introduced to identify really border obstacles between Estonia and Latvia, and they introduced common methodology and questionnaire. Now that is available in 3 languages from 2018. And in this questionnaire, then all the regions and the municipalities can then identify and highlight then obstacles that might need intervention on some kind of level. And one of the project ideas that came from this idea gathering is a project Harmonized Geodetic Systems. So this is now a concrete result and an issue that we can then tackle already in this programming period. Currently, we are introducing this topic to the program document. And so shall I talk about this idea now?
It would be very interesting to learn a bit how it turned from an idea into a project, which is usually a quite difficult step, in particular when it comes to administrative and legal obstacles between two countries. So that would be quite interesting for us.
Indeed. At the last joint session, the Estonian Land Board representative introduced this idea of harmonized geodetic reference systems in Estonia and Latvia. And it was decided that Estonia Latvia program could consider really supporting this project idea, because it is obvious that it would really have very positive long-term impact and solve many issues in different areas of life. And really, after this introduction of the idea was presented to the monitoring committee, and now we have worked with the idea further to elaborate, to really establish output indicator and result indicator, and and finances for this project. So the idea is that the problem, where the problem comes from, is that the national official geodetic reference systems used in Latvia and Estonia are based on European reference systems, but the official systems in Estonia and Latvia separately are slightly different. And due to that, it's a quite specific topic, but due to that, there are differences in the existing data, and it means that there are differences in coordinates and differences in height. So if very bluntly say, for example, a simple example, that road from one side of the border and then the other side of the border wouldn't go together, like technically on the technical project. So the idea is that with this 2 years project to harmonize the system, and it is expected that very different governmental institutions and infrastructure projects will really benefit from this environmental, water management, energy, state border management, agricultural projects. So we foresee that given that the European Commission approves the program document amendments, then the project could start next year, and we could see the results then by the end of 2023.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and question to you is that, let's say, the first idea which came from that survey or questionnaire set up by the committee, which came from there to your program, or did you have already other projects coming from that, from the work of the committee between Estonia and
there
Latvia?
are other ideas, but not specifically like fitting currently into the program right now. Mm-hmm. But maybe there is something to consider next financing period.
Mm-hmm. And do you regularly review that list as a program? Did I understand?
Actually, no. This is really through the national authorities that these ideas are presented to the monitoring committee, and mm-hmm. then we respectively then take the development as necessary. But mm-hmm. it's not just like they're looking for different funding options, and then the Estonian program is just one of them. So if it fits, then it's a good match.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good. And maybe the final question, when looking into Interreg Specific Objective Better Cooperation Governance, do you consider it for your program? And did you already start discussing, let's say, compiling, collecting first ideas, what you could do under the objective? Could you share that with us a bit?
Yes, it's currently a bit maybe early days, but so far the Joint Programming Committee has really identified this specific objective as relevant and possibly supported, and namely the two specific objectives: enhanced institutional capacity of public authorities and enhanced efficient public administration by promoting legal and administrative cooperation and so forth. So, and we have discussed, the committee has discussed groups of activities, and currently we are gathering ideas from the stakeholders as well. We have a web survey, and we'll see then what ideas come from the stakeholders, regions, municipalities. But currently, like very, as I said, like early days, vaguely identified, mm-hmm. Is creation of cross-border public services, cross-border strategies, action plans, increase the capacity to manage the specific territory. So, and many topics are still like considered if they fit or can be supported under other POs. So, mm-hmm. But yeah, the discussion will continue soon.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Helena, for sharing these thoughts with us. And yeah, we'll keep you informed about further developments. Thanks a lot. Hello, everyone. Today we are happy to welcome Anna Höglhammer. Anna Höglhammer works for the managing authority of the program Bavaria, Austria. And yes, Anna, very happy that you're ready to share a couple of ideas for the future Interreg Specific Objective with us.
Yeah, thank you. It's a pleasure. So I will start. In the beginning, I thought to give an overview of how the Euregios were structured in the current period. So the main function of the Euregios in the current period was cross-border spatial development, so communication and administrative tasks, coordination to be a coordination platform for local and regional cross-border issues. The second main function was facilitating the program implementation. That meant all activities supporting and enhancing the implementation of the Interreg program at the regional level, and the regional small project service, which included initiating, advising, and accompanying project partners in regular calls. I also included a map to show the geographical location and distribution of our Euregios in the program area. And also in 2017, we started a process evaluating the functions and the tasks of the Euregios and how their work was implemented in the current period. This was for us the starting point to go, or is seen as a starting point to go in the direction of better cooperation governance. Because in this evaluation, the main conclusions were that a more systematic and strategic cooperation should be enhanced. A deeper understanding for cross-border development should be enhanced, and that the cooperation between different instruments for regional development, for example, LEADER, should be also enhanced. One result also of the evaluation was that in the current period, the main activity of, or there was a strong focus of our Euregios on the small project fund, and the other functions like cross-border spatial development and facilitating program implementation were a bit more disregarded. So after the evaluation, the program authorities also made their conclusions based on the results. First of all, our Euregios have very diverse or heterogeneous structural or developmental conditions. For the next period, there is a need for simplification and strengthening the strategic regional cross-border development, and there was a strong interest to fostering capacities and structural developments for the formation of EGTCs and CLLD. So this was more or less the starting point, and so the starting point for our process towards a more systematic and strategic or regional development. There were lots of discussions between Euregios and the program authorities also. And the situation today is that the Euregios will, also to apply better governance processes, our Euregios play a major role in 2 policy objectives. So there is policy objective 5, Europe closer to citizens, and the better cooperation governance objective. In policy objective 5, we have we would also like to address touristic projects. So there was also a development of a tourism strategy for the whole program area. But apart from that, there will be our Euregios are at the moment developing territorial strategies to have a more strategic approach in the next period. And the core themes of these strategies will also be applied in policy objective 5. And projects addressing those core themes and goals of the Euregio strategy will be addressed in Policy Objective 5. And in also concerning better cooperation governance, in this policy objective, there is a strong focus on cross-border cooperation. So also in this period, we identified 3 main projects, also kinds of projects that focus on cross-border cooperation. It's people-to-people projects. These include very short cross-border cooperation, more short-time cross-border cooperation. But apart from them, there are also small projects which already in this period had more long-term cross-border cooperation as a content, and where, for example, action plans for future developments also after the project ends were developed. And there were also projects focusing on long-term institutional cooperation. This would be the medium-sized projects, which I addressed on the slide. And these are really where on an administrative or institutional level, a long-term cooperation is established in form of contracts or whatever. So in the Interreg Specific Objective Better Cooperation Governance, projects have to address the strategic goals of the Euregio strategy, of the territorial strategy of the Euregio, and have to address also one of the forms of cooperations, of cross-border cooperation. In the policy objective better cooperation governance, we will also have, we also see projects on legal and administrative obstacles, cross-border obstacles, and the support of the staff costs of our regios will be addressed in this objective. And another, as I also said, one conclusion for the program authorities was that the structures of the Euregios are very heterogeneous and diverse. So the goal is to go in the direction to develop EGTCs or CLLD areas, but due to the very diverse conditions, we established 3 options for structural development of the Euregios. The first one is very similar to the current period with some extensions. The Euregio Plus is already more advanced, and the last option would be CLLD. The goal is to offer more responsibility and independence in decision-making processes, but also by in parallel strengthening the 2 functions of the Euregios: cross-border spatial development and program implementation. So, and in all options, a main goal is to address also other regional development instruments and to have a better communication and interaction with regional development instruments. So all of the in all of the options for development, territorial strategy has to be established. And yeah, you can see on the slide the main points regarding decision-making, funding, functions, and also how much co-funding will be supported from the program authorities. So I think the main the main goals or conclusions for us towards better cooperation governance is that in the current period we had a non-strategic development by the regios and rather ad hoc responses to a broad range of issues. This we would like to change in the coming period to a more strategic development and strengthening cross-border spatial development and program implementation. And we also would like to go from this strong focus on servicing small projects towards a stronger individual responsibility and decision-making by the regios. Yeah, thank you for your interest.
Thanks a lot, Anna, for sharing your ideas about enabling Euregios for the future period. And from our side, yes, we wish you, let's say, good luck in this process. And I think we can understand that it's not an easy one, given the sheer number of Euregios you have in your program area. So thanks a lot for sharing these initial ideas and the plan for the future implementation of the Interreg Specific Objective with us. Thank you.
Hello, good morning. Today we have Agnese Marnauza from the program ENI CBC Latvia-Russia, who is going to tell us about their reason to use better cooperation governance and how they are going to use it. So please, Agnese, the floor is yours. Tell us more about it.
Yes, thank you. So our program, Latvia-Russia, has had so far 2 generations of it. So in period 2007-13, we were trilateral program, Estonia, Latvia, Russia. In the current period, we are bilateral, Latvia, Russia, and we will be bilateral program also for Interreg next programming period. And our reasoning why we propose to the Joint Programming Committee to include this Interreg Specific Objective 1, and also why the Programming Committee members were very welcoming of this idea, was because that judging from our experience in 7-13 period, we had their specific priority, which was called people-to-people actions, basically. And in that priority, we had in total 16 projects for the total amount of roughly 3.3 million euros. And those projects were very successful, and this priority was very much demanded by our beneficiaries. And our beneficiaries at that stage were public institutions or public entities, and also NGOs from the areas, from the border areas. And so when we designed our current program, 14-20 program, we didn't actually take this specific priority. We had a bit different thematics. For example, we have thematics about environment and thematics about business development and support, which are not exactly people-to-people activities. Yet we see very much that project applicants who applied, they designed a lot of complementarity activities, which are in fact people-to-people activities, if we look at them as separate activities. So for us, it was quite evident that these priorities, and these people-to-people activities are quite important for our target audience that lives in this border area with Latvia and Russia, and they have demand for such cooperation. So that being said, we were also very happy that for our external programs, the Commission with the External Action Service, they have designed a special paper called Interreg Next, and they have also, from their perspective, analyzed what would be, in their opinion, the needs for our program and where should our program invest, and what activities should our program support best. And we were very happy to see that also our feelings and our experience with our previous and current program also coincide with the opinion of how the Commission also sees it. And it was a horizontal kind of principle and guidance that they gave, that we should really explore this Interreg Specific Objective 1 for our program, and propose it for inclusion into our program document. So all things considered, that's exactly what we did. And we were happy to see that all our stakeholders and participants in the programming committee were also in the same opinion as us. And so we had this common agreement that this is the direction that we should go in.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. What type of actions or projects? I mean, how would you implement it? You said talk about people-to-people kind of projects, but what kind of big projects, smaller projects?
Yes, so we are looking at both specific objectives under this, both at this enhancing of institutional capacity for public authorities, and also on the second option, that is this mutual trust by encouraging people-to-people actions. And how we look at them is we look that we should explore actions under people-to-people, this specific objective, such as, for example, preservation of local traditions, when the wider public can get acquainted with the local heritage that we have in the region, with the organization of some common and joint events and festivals, and also support in various fields that relate to social inclusion, education, culture, preservation of local traditions, and development of craftsmanship. And that very much fits with what I said about our previous experience, but because those are the activities that we really see that are in demand and would be still in demand. And for these public authorities, we see that those might be activities where we help local and regional authorities to improve some services for their regional development. And we see that these projects most likely will not be the biggest, I mean, in terms of finances, but perhaps they would be the biggest in heart, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Because really what shines through, and from our experience what shines through in these projects, is that people really this cross-border cooperation comes out in the most natural sense.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really like you can physically see what cross-border cooperation is about. So from that perspective, I think it's really obvious that what we hopefully will be able to do, granted we haven't had these discussions and no financing is known, etc., and no details are known, but perhaps it would be nice to have a broad spectrum of these projects and quite a lot of them, but maybe not so big, and then it will allow for this vision to flourish and in this broad spectrum.
Yeah, so everybody will participate, right? That's
yes,
the
to ensure as much as possible wider audiences can participate and apply, either as direct beneficiaries or as like final target audiences. So,
which specific kind of stakeholders you're talking about?
We are still talking about the same approach that we had previously about public entities, public bodies that derive from public entities and NGOs. So, because those are very strong in our region, and they have we have quite a lot of umbrella organizations, a lot of organizations that are responsible for local heritage or craftsmanship, etc. So most likely those will be the beneficiaries. Schools, some I don't know, like places where you spend free time, like NGOs set up for children, etc. So it's a wide spectrum.
Thank you very much, Agnese. You gave us a good idea of what you want to do. The best of luck, and well, we will keep in touch for next. We will follow your program for sure.
Yes, thank you.
Hello, everyone. Today we have as a guest Martin Buršík from the Czech Ministry for Regional Development. He is here in the capacity as managing authority for the Interreg program Czech Poland. And Martin is kind enough to share with us the ideas of program partners for the new Interreg Specific Objective Better Cooperation Governance. Thanks and welcome, Martin.
Hello, everybody. I also thank you, Bernard, that you invited me and allowed me to share our ideas, how we prepare Interreg specific objectives, or what we plan to do in the next programming period under this Interreg specific objective. It's maybe first of all, I have to say that we are still in the process. So we haven't finished or completed the preparation of the program yet. So we are still developing on that and reflecting also the development of negotiation of regulations and also some other inputs that are coming. So all what I am sharing today is still not final, and of course it can change before the program is completed. So under Interreg specific objective, we plan, as for now, we plan the first two activities. So the first activity to enhance institutional capacity of public authorities. And then the second one to enhance efficient public administration by promoting legal and administrative cooperation and cooperation between citizens and institutions, mainly with the aim to resolve or remove some legal or administrative obstacles. We also support people-to-people projects in the next programming period, but we haven't decided yet whether we will support it under Interreg specific objective or under other policy objective, because the people-to-people actions we plan to support through the instrument Small Project Fund, and we might support also some other activities under this instrument. So now we are discussing whether to support people-to-people actions under Interreg Specific Objectives or maybe Policy Objective 5 as a part of some complex strategies of Euro regions. So that's still open. But as I said, we definitely plan to support people-to-people actions. So when I come back to these first two actions which are mentioned in Interreg regulation, so the first one, which is focused mainly on a capacity building activities. So we understand this these activities as activities which have the aim to enhance capacity of public authorities to cooperate across border. So we plan to support activities such as networking of institutions, then also activities focused on staff of public authorities, for example, language learning, or some study visits, exchange of experience among public authorities across border. So these are activities that we plan under this first field, which we call capacity building. Under the second action, we understand that this action is more focused on dealing with specific problems or specific obstacles, specific barriers. So the activities that we plan to support under these second actions are mainly focused on cooperation of institutions with the aim to analyze some obstacles, so to support some analysis, researches, and so on. And then, of course, also to preparing or developing solutions of how to resolve specific barriers or specific obstacles. We also plan to support transfer of know-how among institutions or between institutions in a specific topics, and then we also plan to support the cooperation of institutions not only to resolve obstacles but in general to deal with some problems or some barriers and so on. So that's in short what we plan to support. How we came to this activities. We at the beginning of programming of the process we prepared or we established some focus groups for each policy objectives, and so we had also one focus group for this Interreg Specific Objective where we invited some stakeholders, and all these activities that I mentioned are one of the results of the discussion.
Thanks a lot for sharing, Martin. And just a question, could you give us an example of one of the obstacles which you are, for example, aware of in the border region between Czech and Poland?
Okay, so there is, for example, one of the things is, for example, statistic data, and every time we are programming, we face this issue because the data are not comparable, And we tried already in the current programming period to bring together the national statistic offices to work on that. At that time, they didn't have capacity, so maybe, and we hope that for the new programming period, that will be one of the topics and one of the things that could be resolved, or if not resolved, so that we can improve the situation.
And now, coming back to the issue of barriers, which is, I think, a recurring issue in many cross-border programs. How would you see that for your program, Martin?
So, for example, one of the barrier which has a legal nature is in the field of rescue services, where compared to other emergency service or other emergency service like police or fire brigades, the legal basis for cooperation between Czech Republic and Poland is still missing, and due to this fact, the cooperation between rescue services in Czech Republic and Poland is not developed, or is in fact it's just starting the cooperation. So that's one of the barrier which I can think about.
So its cooperation is more advanced in fields of police and fire brigades, whereas in the health sector it's still in its initial stage.
Yeah, exactly. As concerns police and fire brigades, the cooperation is quite advanced or quite improved. But as concerns the health sector and, for example, this rescue services, it's in initial phase.
Thank you, Martin. Thanks. Hello, everyone. Today we have two guests from the Interreg program Meuse-Rhine. We have here Michael Dejozé and Jean-Philippe Odeurs, and both will tell us a bit what they plan to do under this Interreg Specific Objective in their region. Hello, welcome.
Thank you. Hello, thank you, Bernard. Maybe briefly I'll present myself. I'm Jean-Philippe Odeurs. I'm Senior Program Manager at the Interreg Euregio Meuse-Rhine program. And well, so thank you for the invitation to share our thoughts around the planning and the building of the new future program, and how we can integrate this Interreg specific objectives in our program.
And I'm Michael Dejozé. I'm the director of the EGTC Euregio Meuse-Rhine, which is closely working with the program and trying to define objectives for the next program period and to get a common understanding on where this program in this area should go to. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you.
So maybe we'll also go then, before starting really with the content and or concrete ideas, we want also to share some information about our region, and because we think it is has some specificities, and so here's a few key facts we have. We also want to share that we have a long history of cooperation, cross-border cooperation. It already started in the 1970s, and so there was already a quite natural need for cooperation, looking the geographic setting, and we will come later with a small map so that everybody can place it also. So also then we were active already in Interreg from the first programming period, and we have always had an Interreg program in our region until now. And yes, with regard to the region itself, it has it's a very integrated region where borders are not very visible anymore. People cross border very intensively every day, and this is also due to the high population density and diversity. So we have more or less 5 million people living in an area of 15,000 square kilometers, and is between 3 member states, and where also people use 3 different languages. So and as you can see it here on the map, you see that we have the dark orange part, which is the core area of the Meuse-Rhine, and in orange it's are extensions of the Interreg program area, but you can also see that quite important cities are very close by the core region, and so it's this also explains this very intensive cooperation on daily basis. And so of course, based on that, or based on our experience and or reality in our area, we are considering as a program to also include actions with regard to the Interreg Specific Objective 1, and certainly with the main objective is to improve support to citizens and organization facing cross-border challenges in the territory. And to do so, we are also wanting to strengthen the link between the Interreg program, the EGTC, and the civil society in the region. And for more concrete ideas, I leave the floor to Michael.
Thank you, Jean-Philippe. Indeed, it's very important for us to get a good and a clear picture on what is going on the field, and to figure out how to improve the link between needs on the field and the program on the other hand. And the first thing we would like to do is to get a new kind of mapping to figure out for topics which we aren't that fit and that developed on, to get a good picture on what's happening on the field and where the needs are really located. So we would like to make this work before starting having people start working on projects or whatever, but to start by really figuring out the need, the situation on the field, to get a clear picture and to get a clear strategy on where to go to. As soon as we know how the situation is built, we would like to proceed to networks and or even better, maybe structures. So the idea is there also not to have a network especially built by or in a project, but to start building a structure, start building cooperation beforehand, before you start working on an Interreg project or maybe even something else. We do believe that it's important that people know where to go before getting involved in a project process, and to get a clear picture of the goal of the problem they see beforehand. So building networks and structures would be another work package, another idea of this governance aspect. Knowing, and this is the third point, that those actors in need are not systematically sent towards Interreg, because we see in our region that not everything has to be addressed or worked on by projects. Often we see projects can be, problems can be like from political nature, legal nature, etc. And the idea is everything systematically, or to have everything systematically addressed by an Interreg project. So the orientation from our perspective is something very, very important, since the toolbox that we have to address cross-border problems is getting broader and more dense. So we have way more possibilities now to help people to address problems than in the past. And so the idea is to get information in this focal point, as we will probably call this this cooperation idea focal point, so that people can address their questions there and see with them, okay, this is the problem, this is a network we can work with, this is the situation on the field. Okay, let's start with a political debate about it, maybe, or let's first resolve some legal obstacles before making the next step. And then the networks and stakeholders would be oriented towards maybe the Interreg program, maybe the small project fund, or maybe to the political level. So the idea is to get a more clear and better picture before starting getting involved into processes, by taking the time to work on the aims and goals instead of working on thinking of using time to think on technical stuff. First, be clear on what you want to do. We also have the small project fund, which would be probably a great tool to link those things, because the small project fund in our perspective, and at this very moment, has two axes. One would be the classical people-to-people fund, which would be initiatives quite close to citizens, which is the main idea, to get this extremely integrated region, to have people working together, coming together, and to keep this integrated spirit alive. The other one, the administrative projects, is more like, I would call it a micro B solution or something like this, a bit different, but the idea is there to address legal obstacles. In the first phase of this administrative program, we often see that especially municipalities and really located at the border have quite sometimes even small legal problems, legal obstacles they just cannot surpass, and they don't have the expertise to do so. So the idea here is to give them the expertise in the first phase, to give them legal support to figure out eventually a solution for the problem, and if we find a solution, to look down with them if which could be the next steps for the implementation of it. So there we would also see a nice link between the focal point, which will work on mapping, building lasting networks and structures, as well as the orientation. And one structure where they could be oriented to would be the small project fund. So even there we have a great integration between Interreg on one side, the Interreg Management Authority, the focal point with the governance means, and the small project fund. And we do believe that it's important to do this quite closely together. The idea is not, we have to avoid making different brands, making more or less chaos by building structures and structures. The idea should be to have a good and close cooperation between all three of them. This can be done by common team meetings, by common communication, etc. But it should be clear and a good orientation for people. Like if we have an organization coming towards the focal point, they build a network, we get a full picture of where to go to, then the idea should be to be in permanent exchange with Interreg to see, okay, is this something we could go towards a project now? Would you advise us to orient them towards the project? Or do you really think this does not fit in the goal of the general goal of the program? So we have this permanent exchange so that Interreg can see, the EMA can see with the focal point where the program could be oriented to, where there's still things lacking. And on the other hand, the focal point could prepare initiatives that later on could make high quality Interreg projects, because they will not start from scratch. They will get towards a project with already a certain ideas in mind and a certain strategy and planning. And next to this, the small project fund, which will make the triangle complete, would be one of the tools that the focal point as well as Interreg can use, because for us as EGTC, it's extremely important to see that not everything needs to be addressed by a huge Interreg project. Sometimes we can do things differently. There are different tools that we can use. There are legal tools, there are other programs. It's important to guide people towards the right tool to get the desired impact. So the cooperation between all three of them seems very, very important for us. Maybe Jean-Philippe, you would like to react on that.
Yes, I fully support this idea of also having it Interreg being as a helping to start up to build things with also a long-lasting perspective, and at the end having structures that can also function independently of other subsidy. The idea is to identify issues, to propose solutions, and also to build tools to solve them, but then also just to make the demonstration that it works, and also that by doing the demonstration and also convincing other levels of administrative or political levels to continue investing in that, and also just seeing the benefit of it. And I think that that's certainly a key role for Interreg in that. And indeed, strong cooperation is certainly needed then, because if it's done just on one side at the end, the risk is that it's not continuing, or that the interactions are not strong enough for the future. So yes, in that sense, we as managing authority, you can certainly support this. But I also just want to reclarify that these are all discussions that are now taking place. We are in the process. We are planning and creating a new program, and this is a discussion point. Concrete ideas that are put on the table, and we have to see. Hopefully, we can also make it concrete and also fully integrate it in the future program. But at this stage, this cannot be seen as an achievement.
I think what you just said, Jean-Philippe, is quite important. We see just now in the framework of the COVID crisis how important it is to have permanent structures that people know each other and don't need to start cooperation when something happens. And I think we are very grateful, we're gratefully thankful to Interreg that we had in the last years great projects. I think some of the best projects actually have survived, I would say, the end of their project phase. And this is what we would like to have even more in the future. Having nice initiatives to get some achievements it's absolutely great, but for us it's quite important also to build up permanent structures that we can use even sometimes for things that are not in the same relevance at this moment. Just think about crisis management. We had Interreg projects in the past which helped us building up a crisis cooperation network, which now is a permanent structure, permanently financed by its partners, which is absolutely great. People know each other for that reason. They meet each other quite frequently. And now we have a huge crisis and everyone knows each other, everyone trusts each other, and everyone can work together quite efficiently. And this is what we actually like, that we get some more constant. Often you have a project that starts, you get a pick, it's great, everyone's happy, and then the financing stops and the initiatives start fading out slowly. But what we really want to achieve with ISO 1 is to get towards more sustainable cooperation, towards structures that will last way longer and that we can use even after and besides in the Interreg program.
And maybe still also to complement, really the idea behind it is really to have these structures serving citizens and organizations in the region, and it's really it's really this as a main target. And yes, we are convinced that there is still need, even if we have this strong history of cooperation. A lot of things have been done. Issues have been tackled, challenges have been tackled, but not everything has been done yet, as the world also continue evolving and interaction getting more and more intense. And indeed, the current crisis that we're getting through also remembered us about borders, something that we maybe have forgotten. Crossing the border has become as natural as going in another region of your own country, but in the last weeks we realized that basically there was still a difference, and that we should certainly should keep attention for.
So, I mean, from our meetup perspective in Interact, it's very interesting for us that you openly share your ideas on working on the program. And I'm also very happy to see such a constructive relationship between, let's say, the EGTC as a player in the program area and the program representatives, which is, I would say, not always the case. And I would have one final question related to the future program. It's the question mark whether you also consider to take on board Policy Objective 5, the Europe Closer to Citizens, as a policy objective which goes for strategy building, work along integrated multi-sectorial strategies. If you would consider that, and if there is, let's say, a bit of a link between the structures you support in building up under the Interreg Specific Objective and then the implementation part under the Policy Objective 5. That's, yeah, question.
So maybe I can briefly say something about the fact that we have discussed this already in the preparation phase. It is on the table. Certainly more around priority objective 5, with the idea to have a focus on tourism. This is certainly a demand of some program partners. Tourism is an important dimension, economic dimension for some regions. And so indeed, the challenge is also to make it a real strategy, cross-sectoral approach. This is also new for us. In the past, we were more used to have this more specific initiatives or projects on some building some touristical products, but indeed we also realized the limits of that, and then indeed getting into a broader strategy looks interesting, but there is still discussion going on this. How can we take it up? So we're really only at the very beginning of it.
Mm-hmm. And furthermore, in completing what Jean-Philippe just said, we indeed in this region have like certain speeds, even at certain levels. We have a lot of different governance structures, and we also have, like I would say, smaller cooperation regions in this region, Meuse-Rhine. Then it's not always fitting the same size as the region or even program, and it could be interesting to have those smaller regions, which are regions that put themselves together because of high density of movement, because of a lot of different border related problems, that we could ask them or see with them which strategy they pursue to achieve improvement in this I would say micro level, which is not actually that small. But we do believe that it could be interesting to have this other governance and administrative cooperation structures develop strategies on a local level, and to do this by using PO5. And lastly, there should be also, I think, a link between PO5 and ISO 1, since ISO 1 works on governance by working on the points we presented beforehand. You can see that there's a part of strategy building, there's a part of getting ideas from like more chaotic principles towards a clear common strategy, and maybe there are some links to be made between PO5 and ISO 1. So we would like to use at least at this very moment to think this through, to take the time to see which is the best way and how we can use it to fit the need of the three best. But okay, it's a challenging one. It's new for all of us, so we have to to stay in touch with people on the ground to see how we could make something good out of it. But yes, we are talking about it, and we try to find a common ground on this.
Thanks a lot, Michael. Thanks a lot, Jean-Philippe. very interesting ideas, and I hope that, let's say, the best parts of it will come true. Thanks a lot to you.
You're welcome.
Thank you too. Bye.
Bye.